All right, I do want to go over the rest of Chapter 1, so this is where we left off. I'm going to go through it kind of quickly, all right? And again, we will go over the review at the end, where you'll go over kind of the most important topics. But for you to totally get everything out of it, it probably would be worth your while to read the chapter. You know, I have taught classes before where a student has said to me, you know, I got through your classes and I never even read the chapters in the book. I don't think that's a good thing, because I can't tell you everything that's in every chapter. I hit what I consider to be the high points. All right? So, C# is a totally object-oriented programming language. Object-oriented languages have this stuff right here. They have classes. We mentioned this last semester. You may or may not remember, but it's a blueprint. So again, if you're building a house, typically you'll have some kind of an architectural plan of what the house should look like. So you could build a lot of versions of that house. All right? The blueprint would be the class. Every example house that you made from that blueprint would be an object. All right? You have what are called encapsulation and interfaces. I've given you this kind of example before. If I do this, if I do a Control P right now, all right, and I hit print, okay, it should print out on the screen, or on the printer. I don't know how that happens. I don't care how it happens. I just care that if I send something to the printer and it doesn't work, then it's fixable, okay? So what I'm telling you is, what you see on this is, as you start looking through it, is the actual act of what happens when I do the Control P. It's encapsulated or hidden from me, and I don't care what it is. What I see is the interface. You want another example, and again, it might be one you've seen from me or other people earlier. That's the interface for a calculator, right? But when I put in a number and I hit the square root key, I don't have any idea how that happened internally. You know, I don't know what formula, because there's different formulas for figuring out a square root. I don't know. I don't care. It's encapsulated from me. All I see is the interface, which lets me know what I have to do in order to get the code to run. So that's the encapsulation in the interface. Inheritance, it's kind of like genetic inheritance. And I think I've mentioned this type of example to you before. Typically, if you have a man with a big nose who marries a woman with a big nose and they have a baby, quite often the baby has a big nose. That's genetics, right? Genetic inheritance. It's not like the baby can sit there and say, I don't really like this nose, take it off and put on another one. You can do that with C# inheritance. You can inherit something but override it and rewrite it if you want to do that. All right? Then there's polymorphism. And again, I don't want to go too nuts because it would confuse you. But let's assume that I was going to create a bunch of these classes and I was going to make a hierarchy. So I was going to make a class called animal. And then off of that, I was going to make 3 other classes. One called dog, one called cat, and one called pig. Well, this class would be everything common to all animals. So I would say here, I might make a method that's called speak. And I'm not trying to be funny here. If I did a speak for a dog, it wouldn't be the same as a speak for a cat or a pig, right? They make different sounds. But the idea behind this, maybe that's better, is I could make a speak method, and then I could come in here and I could override. So I could make my own speak method here, and I could make my own speak method here, and I could make my own speak method here. And this one, you know, might go woof or whatever. This one might go meow, and this one might go oink. But the idea is, if I said speak to a dog object, it knew what it was how it was supposed to speak. If I did it for a cat, it would know. Does that make sense? That's polymorphism. And it says if I have the same method I call on a bunch of different kinds of classes or objects, it knows the right thing to do. All right? And it's not something you really and truly have to worry a lot about right now. All right? But that's what's explained in here. Okay? So if you want more detail, like I said, read the chapter because it all is mentioned in there. Encapsulation is sometimes known as a black box. And that's the thing from a computer. Hopefully you all know this. But the CPU, which is kind of the brain of your computer, it's about the size of a postage stamp. Really, what runs it is about like this. That's the thing, if it goes, basically you got a piece of junk unless you can replace the CPU. All right? So they more about interface and inheritance and polymorphism. All right, and you know this, the author is not going to put her stuff exactly the way I put it. All right, but that's good that you get it from a couple different sources. All right. Yeah. Oh, that's great. Last time that happened, let's see. What if we try to take it out, try to put it back in there again? According to the guys from IT, they know what the problem is, but they can't fix it. They were up there, they ripped that thing apart, they did a bunch of stuff, and they made it better, but part of it's not fixable. And they're gonna try to this summer, but it'll involve probably replacing the whole unit, and they wanna do that when there aren't classes in here. That's what I've heard at least, so. Okay. All right. So like I said, you get more if you just read what the author says. So C# is a programming language. It's, as I mentioned, those of you who were in the JavaScript class last semester, JavaScript, you'll understand what I meant when I said how forgiving it is when you see this. It's super easy to make a mistake in this language. The good news is when we get into Visual Studio, on the bottom of the screen, it'll typically show you a message in your error window what the error is. And if you double click on it, it'll take you right to the line that was the error. So if you forget to put in a semicolon, you'll get an error down here that'll say something like semicolon expected. And if you double click on that line, it'll take you to the line that doesn't have the semicolon. Now, not all errors will be like that, but many of them you'll be able to fix like that. And if you make an error like that once or twice, you probably won't make it anymore because you'll say, oh, I know what that is. All right. And I'm saying this, you may have heard me say this before, it's not a joke. If, Tiffany's having a problem with a program. She asks Valerie. Valerie finds the error right away. It's really fun to find other people's errors. It is. And it's typically not that hard because they're have such tunnel vision looking at it that they've lost all objectivity. But the good news is eventually Valerie will make an error and she won't be able to figure it out and Tiffany will tell her what it is. All right? And that's just natural. All right. Now, it says C# is very similar to Java. That's really good news for you because a year from now, you're going to be taking a Java class. And you're going to go, this is almost, I've said this before, if I had somebody from Microsoft next to me, they'd hit me in the head with their clipboard, but C# is Microsoft's answer to Java. Microsoft never thought Java would be as popular as it is. And they're not identical languages, but they're very similar. Now, it says it's also based on C++. You don't even want to hear me talk about C++. That's a very difficult language to use. All right, it's got a lot of stuff in it that we don't even have to talk about in this language. Some of the same stuff happens in here, but it happens behind the scenes. So you don't have to write the code for it, where in C++ you do. So here's an example of your first program. Now, when you go and create a program, okay, this program, we would probably save the name of the program as, we'd call it first class, literally, just like it's shown right there. And once we do that, this line will be created for you, so will this line, so will this line, so will this line, and this line. The only one you have to write is this. Does it make sense to you? Looking at that would literally write on a screen, this is my first C# program. That makes sense? But one thing I'm going to show you is there's even a shortcut for this. So, because when you're computer people, you don't want to do any more than you have to. So I'm going to show you a shortcut where you don't even have to write that. You can leave that out and just put in write line. You'll put a line up at the top of your program to do that. But then you don't have to keep saying system.console. Just a shortcut, you know. Well, what if I don't want it? What if I want to write and write that? Okay, it won't hurt anything. But the author does a good job then of breaking this down. First thing you'll see is that's a string. Unlike JavaScript, remember JavaScript you could put strings in double quotes or single quotes? only double quotes for strings. If you put single quotes, that's for a single character. All right? But just get used to, for strings, double quotes. Notice the semicolon at the end of the line. Any executable line in this language must have a semicolon. And you might say, oh yeah, just like it was in JavaScript. No, a lot of you left your semicolons out in JavaScript, and it still worked. JavaScript, it's always recommended that you put the semicolons in. This language, you have to. All right. This thing right here, remember how I had you call, or usually when I wrote a driver for a program, it was called main? That's where it came from. All right. Every C# program must have a main in it. That's kind of a point of entry. When we start, we're going to have most of our stuff in main. As we go on, we'll have almost nothing in main. All right. And it'll make sense, hopefully at least, once we go to it. When you see console like this, it means it's a console program. What I showed you before, where you've got the black background and the white text. Okay? All right. We'll get into write line and read line. Write is how you write something on the screen. Read line is how you get input from a user. All right, so if I wanted to say, please tell me your first name. Drew types in Drew. It says, well, hello, Drew. What is your last name? Okay, those would be read lines as opposed to write lines. All right? All right. You don't have to worry about this right now, except that unfortunately it is on the test. What is a namespace? All right, and it's a grouping. It allows you to put a bunch of stuff together. All right? All right, method head and method body. Well, let's go back a page. That's your method heading right there. It says this is static, which means there's only one of them. It says it's void, which means it doesn't return anything. And I don't have to ask you what its name is, because you already know. It's main. And it doesn't require any additional information. So there's nothing in the parentheses. So the method header is what's at the top. Everything within the curly braces here, everything in there, that's the method body. Okay? And again, I'm not just saying this. It will take literally no time at all, and that'll be second nature to you. You just won't even think about it. You'll just do it. White space is any combination. You can hit the space bar, you can hit the tab, even blank lines. That's all white space. Here, if you want more on what static is, you can read that. If you want more on what void is, you can read that. All right? And again, if you think, wow, you're just whipping through this way too fast, there are a set of about 30 to 60 for each chapter PowerPoints on this stuff. I've already done those lectures. If you want more than what you're getting in these lectures, then you're going to have to go out to the YouTube channel and read and watch those lectures. All right, an identifier, I mentioned this a little earlier, it's something you create. It's a name that you give. It's a variable name, or a class name, or an object name. Or if you're writing your own method, it's a method name. But you have to follow some rules. I'm going to take this and try to make it as simple as possible. If you use just letters, it's so much easier. So anything that you name, if you only use letters, the rest of these things don't really even matter. But you can't use keywords. And what are keywords? We're going to look at those in just a minute. The word int, I-N-T, is a keyword in this language. So you can't create anything of your own that's called int, because it already means something to the system. Okay. There's your keywords. So this is the bottom of page 14 if you have your book. There are somewhere around 50 approximately keywords. The good news is when we start writing programs, if you want to make something the name that's already a keyword, that'll appear as either bolded or a different color. So you'll know right away that it's a keyword. All right, again, we'll start looking at all that stuff pretty shortly. I guess there's more. There's the rest of them. So this is what the author does, and you may like it, you may not like it. But she says, hey, Those are the rules. Now I'm going to show you some stuff in here, and these are legal. Then I'm going to show you some more stuff that's illegal. And I'm going to tell you why it's illegal. For instance, this is illegal because it has a blank space. Blank spaces, that's a keyword. Can't start with a number. Can't have a special character. All right? I like that about this book. I think she does a good job with this. Comments. All right? In this language, you've seen this before if you were in the other class. So if I want to do a multi-line comment, I start it with a forward slash and then an asterisk. I can write a comment over as many lines as I want, and then I end it with a asterisk and a slash. If I have just a single line I want to comment, it's slash, slash. That's it. There's another kind of comment where you put 3 slashes in. It's called an XML comment. We'll just not think about that one for right now. We'll talk about it, but it'll be in a later chapter. So I just mentioned the comments. So the single line with a slash slash is called a line comment with a slash star and the star slash. That's a block comment. They also mentioned, again, the XML comments, which we're just going to skip for right now. All right. The system namespace, well, again, if you don't want to write system.console.something, there's ways of making it easier for yourself. We're going to get to that in just a minute. Notice how it says here, system.console.writeLine. If I just put at the top using system, now I don't have to say system dot. I can just say console dot. And they don't mention it in here, but there's even another shortcut, and I'm going to show you that one, where you only have to write WriteLine. All right? Sometimes people think, well, I should do it this way because I'm just learning, so I should write all that stuff. I don't understand the reason for that, but if that's the way you feel, then you should do it that way. It's not going to hurt anything. Even if you put at the top of your program using system, you can still put here system dot, and it will be fine. One of the reasons for using Visual Studio is as soon as you write console dot, it brings up IntelliSense. So it'll bring up a bunch of things that you might want to use with that. So if I type in console dot and I put in a W, it'll show me WriteLine. So if I hit the tab key, it'll fill in the rest of the word for me. And if you don't know what I mean, you'll see it when we start keying in code in just a bit. So she explains what's going on in this program, but it's just writing on the screen, line 1, line 2, line 3. That's it. And she's got an example where she has you do that. So if you remember from the last, the book we had for JavaScript, I know because it was your favorite, but that book in JavaScript, what you typically did was you went through all the examples that were in the chapter. You don't have to do that in this book, but you can, and if it would help your knowledge, I would strongly suggest it. There's usually only 1 or 2 examples in each chapter. All right? When you compile a program, really, the only thing that the computer understands, if you remember at the beginning of the chapter, we talked about a little bit about machine language and zeros and ones. That's the only thing the computer internally understands. So when you compile a program, you're changing it in from the English-like stuff that you write into the zeros and ones the computer can understand. All right? And they go through it in a little bit more depth and breadth of coverage, but that's really all you really have to understand for it. I mentioned the difference that you can use a command line, and that's that console app, or you can use the IDE, the integrated development environment that we use in here is Visual Studio. That is the IDE. All right? And so they have you do a command line, and as I mentioned before, you could write a program right from Notepad and then go compile it like this. This stands for C# compile. That's the CSC. I've never done it like that, but you can do it like that. To me, it's a lot of work to do for, a lot of buck for very little bang. All right. Then they say, well, what if you make a mistake? What could happen? All right. Well, in this case, they said they did this, and they said the file could not be found. Well, should be obvious what the problem is. You're in the wrong directory. You're running the right command, but it can't find the file. If you spelled CSC wrong, if you put in CSCC, you're going to get a different error. All right? Do you have to worry about that stuff? If you use the IDE, which is the way we're going to start with it, then there's not a problem. It's just pushing a couple buttons. So that's what they have you doing here. All right, we're going to go look at that in just a minute. Because we're virtually done, I think, with this chapter. She explains the difference, which was what I've been doing with you, between using a console app and using the IDE. And then she has you write one from the command line. Then she has you write the same program again from Visual Studio. So you get an example of doing both. All right. So let's look, and if you have your book, I'm not telling you what to do here, but if you want to write these right in your book, you can. We're going to go over these review questions right now, these that are on page 41 in your book. You don't have a book yet, you want to jot it down on a piece of paper or whatever until you get the book. It's up to you. I'm not telling you what to do and where to put things. But I'm going to literally just bring up, because I've got the answer key from the author. All right? So, taking it from the top. This is an interesting question because it says programming languages such as Java and Visual Basic. Well, since the name of this book has C# in it, I would have put C# in that question, but the author didn't. So really, it's programming language such as Java, C#, and Visual Basic. They're known as high-level languages, which means that they're English-like. So the answer is C for number 1. Number 2, a program that translates high-level programs into intermediate or machine code is called B, a compiler. Number 3, the grammar and spelling rules of a programming language, the answer is C, that's the language's syntax. And I'm going to keep going. If I'm going too fast, you have to stop me. Number 4, variables are. That's actually an incomplete definition, but the answer is B. They are named memory locations. But they're more than that. They're named memory locations whose value can vary. That's why you get the name variable. All right? Number 5. Programs where you create objects are known as object-oriented programs. Some of these questions are actually on your written test, some of them are not. All right? Which of the following is an example of a class and an object? The class would be university, the object would be Harvard. All right? See, if this was backwards, if you would have said Bird and Robin, that would have been a class and an object. But it's not Robin and Bird because they asked for a class and an object. That's an object and a class. Get the difference? All right, these things are disjoint from one another. And the same kind of thing here. Oak is a type of tree. Harvard is a type of university, so an object is a type of a class. All right. This idea of a black box, for lack of better words, that's encapsulation. So number 7 is B, encapsulation. Number 8, of the following language, which is the least similar to C#? And the answer is COBOL. That's the second language I learned. That's very much a 70s language. Still used. It's not going to go away. There's a technical college in Wisconsin, not the one I worked at, but a different one. And I know a lot of the teachers there, some really good people. They still teach COBOL. Their people get 100% employment. You say, well, then why don't we teach it? Because they all have to go to Texas to be employed there. So anybody who wants a job, they start them at like 50 grand a year, but it's in Texas. Right? Anytime you put something in C# within double quotes, it's called a string, sometimes called a literal string. So number 9 is D. Number 10, if you want to print something on the screen, and this is an important one, don't use print line, don't use display line, don't use outline. It's write line. And you'll notice, because I think I probably did it wrong before, the W must be capitalized, the L must be capitalized. That is Pascal casing, not camel casing. If it was camel casing, the W would be lowercase. All right. Number 11, which of the following is a class? Console. System, remember we had that using system.console type of thing? System is what's called a namespace, and console is a class. Void is a return type, and WriteLine is a method. You already know those. So it's B for number 11. Number 12, in C#, a container that groups several classes together is called a namespace. That one is on your test. It's some form or other. I don't remember what, but I remember namespace is on there. Number 13, every C# method contains both a method header and a method body. The header is that line that's got the name of it, the return type, and the parameters, and that public, private, or whatever. And the body is everything that's within the curly braces. So it's number 13 is A, header and a body. 14, which of the following is a method? Main is a method. Main is a method that every C# program has. It's a point of entry for the program. So 14 is C, main. 15, which of the following statements is true? The answer is B. An identifier can contain digits. A is wrong. It doesn't have to begin with an underscore. It can, but usually it begins with a letter. B, no, there's no, I think that 255 is the longest you can make an identifier. If you're typing variable names that are 255 characters, you should be an author. You shouldn't be a programmer. All right. And it can contain only lowercase letters? No, they can have uppercase if you want them to, but it's case sensitive. Number 16, which is not a legal identifier. That's illegal because there are blank spaces in it. This is legal. This is legal. There is no keyword in this language. It's HTML. All right. And I'm trying to figure out why that would be. There's no camel casing, but it's not. It's camel casing is recommended. It's not mandatory. Oh, so this is legal. That's what they're saying. That one is legal. This one is illegal, A. So for 16, it's A because it has blank spaces in it. 17, the text of the program you write is known as source code. That's on the test someplace too. I remember seeing source code. And I think 18 is too. Syntax that's the rules of the language. And I gave you this example last semester, you may or may not remember. But if I'd have come in the first day and said, instead of saying, hello, my name is Jeff Scott, if I'd have said Scott, my hello name, I would have technically been violating the rules of the language. I would have been saying the right words, but in the wrong order. All right. Number 19, a comment that starts like this with a slash star and ends with a star slash is B. It's a block comment. And finally, number 20, if a programmer inserts using static system console, they can make it easier for themselves. That's not even the way we're going to do it, but you'll see that. So instead of having to write all that stuff out, you just have to write line. So it's B. Now, does anybody have any problems with us doing the review questions like this, where I'll just give them to you? Because then that's what we're going to do. All right? All right. It's 10:58. Let's do this. You've had 2 breaks already. Well, you haven't probably had any break. But you've had 2 breaks already. Let's at least get into the system and write that first simple program. Again, if you don't have Visual Studio loaded, or if you don't have a machine with you today, I'm going to ask that you look on with the person next to you. All right? So even though I've got it written already, and I like to do that because I don't ever want to give you code that's got mistakes in it. If I can help it. So I've already got it written. Literally, we will type in 1, 2, 3, 4 lines of code. That's it. The whole program. 4 lines of code. 3 of them are identical, except that 1 at the end will say red, 1 at the end will say white, and 1 at the end will say blue. All right? You're going to paint your own interface right now, and it may not look like mine. We'll talk in later classes how to line stuff up pretty, how to play with colors and do in fonts and whatever. I'm not concerned with that now. To me, it's important that the first day you end up writing at least one program that's symbolic of the language you're going to be using. All right? So, if you do have your machine with you, click your start button or however you start things. Okay? Now, if you want to, you can go right there and just click that. But the other thing you can do is you can right mouse click on this and tell it that you want to, you can put it on your start, you can copy it down here. Hopefully you know all that stuff. All right? But whatever way is easiest for you. A lot of people just don't like to pin it any place, but you should be able to take it and drag it, even put it down here if you want to do that. So there's different ways. But start up Visual Studio. Again, yours should say Community Edition 2015. And please, you don't have to look up here, but please listen to this. If yours says 2017, I can't grade your stuff. 2017 is right now, it's in what's called RC status, which means it's in release candidate status, which means it's not official yet. But 2015 is not upward compatible. You see what I'm saying? I might be able to read your stuff, I don't know. But typically, Microsoft doesn't do a real good job of letting you go from a lower version to a higher version. If they did that, why would you want to buy the higher version? All right? When this comes up, hopefully yours looks at least something like this. If it's the first time, it might take a little longer, and you might get some kind of messages up there that might ask you different things. All right? If you get something like that, occasionally it'll say, what background do you want? And the one on the left is the default. I'd recommend that one. If you like the darker background, then use that one. It's your machine. There is a way to automatically go in and change it afterward too if you want to change it. You might be asked after that, what language do you want to use? If you ask that, you either want to choose C# or Visual C#. It'll have one or the other in there. But regardless, if you look up on the screen here, let me erase this stuff I put up here before. This is your beginning screen, okay? There's a heck of a lot of stuff going on here. If you look over here, you can start a new project from here. You can open an existing project from here. The source control only has to work if you're doing stuff, typically when you're working with groups of people and you have different versions. We're not going to worry about that, so I'm not going to say another word about source code. Here, it has the last 5 or 6 or 10 projects that you've created, so you can open them up from there. All right? This stuff that's over here, this is all hyperlinked. This goes all to Microsoft's site. All right? And I do want to mention this. I did say this last semester. You may or may not remember it, but I mentioned it at least once, and I just want you to hear this. And that is that if I come out here, and you don't have to do this, but you can, kind of the magic site, so to speak, for all things that you ever might want to look at is here. And it's just type in msdn.microsoft.com. MSDN is an acronym that stands for Microsoft Developer Network. All right? You can put the HTTP in and the www, but you don't have to. All right? You might want to go and bring that up and then just hit your bookmark, because it's a real fast way to go and get help on virtually anything. So again, just msdn.microsoft.com. All right? If I do that, it's going to bring me here. It's a very functional site. It's not a pretty site. And probably, Colin, when you go back, I'm sending everybody this URL. So when you get your machine, you'll just be able to click here, boom, it'll install all the software for you. But I think you can install it from here someplace too. They have installs. They have here, they have videos that are in here. They have all sorts of stuff. But let's assume for a second, hey, Jeff today talked about, we were talking about C# strings and I don't remember what he said. So if you look up on the screen here, in the upper right-hand corner, you see the little magnifying glass, which is usually a search, and it is here too. So if I type in here C# strings, it's going to give me back 1,630,000 hits. All right, and usually the first one or two, one of them, for example, right here, C# reference for strings. So if you need more information about something, Microsoft does a good job here. Plus, they typically give you code snippets. And I'm going to tell you this, and you may laugh, it's not a joke, okay? Microsoft recommends, they actually ask you, and they encourage you, is the word I'm looking for, to use their code snippets. They've gotten better. In the past, you'd use their code snippets, they were filled with errors. It's like, what are you doing that for? Are you trying to make me a debugger right away? You know, but I remember talking to a guy from Microsoft, and a help guy, and I said, you know how many errors you have in your code snippet code? He goes, yeah, that's why most people don't copy the stuff in. It's easier to copy it yourself because you don't screw it up. But it's gotten better over the years. All right. So the other stuff that's here, there are a bunch of other things. Notice there's videos and there's other stuff. I'm not going to say another word about this. In fact, I don't ever use this screen, just so you know. The first thing when this comes up, I always close it. That's what I do. You don't have to do that, but I always close it. Because what we're going to do now is we're going to start a new project. So if you still have that opening screen, you can start it from there. But I always just start by doing File, New, Project. All right? So I don't care how you do it, but I'd like you to do that right now. Don't go any further because this is wrong. Your machine is now wrong. All right? Do you see by default, please look right here. By default, it saves everything under your Documents folder, under Visual Studio 2015, under Projects. What's a problem with that? Who does not have access to that? That would be me. Now, I'm going to suggest something. You don't have to do this. But I'm going to suggest that what you do is, I'm going to go back to the desktop, if I can find it in this mess, but I'll just do it from here. I'll cancel. And I'm going to go back to the desktop. I'm going to recommend that what you do on your desktop is right mouse click, choose New, put a new folder in there, and just call the folder C#, and literally, I've already got one called C#, I guess. But, so I'm just going to choose, this is my one that I already have. I'm just going to put some junk in there so I can create it. So New, folder, C#. And I'm going to recommend you put all your projects in there. You don't have to do that. But it's a central repository. It's a nice place for you. You know where everything is. Okay? That's not what's important. What's important is what I'm going to show you right now, whether you did that or not. What you want to do is when you come in and you do your File, New, Project, all right, you're going to want to change this. So you're going to want to click the Browse button, and at a minimum, you're going to want to change to the desktop. The good news is you should only have to do that once. And if I choose C# here, which is the one I just did, and I click Select Folder, see how it changed it right here? Everybody see this? You want it to say that, but it should be on your desktop, because otherwise it's just a pain in the butt for you. And you might think, well, it doesn't sound that bad. It is, because what will happen is it sometimes will save some of your stuff in one folder in one location and some of your stuff in another folder. Doing it this way, that won't happen. That's why I'm showing it to you. Yes?
So if you, would it be better to just put it on the desktop instead of on, like, let's say your drive?
If you want to put it on your flash drive, you can do that too. That's not a problem. So you just have your flash drive in and you would change it to F:, maybe a C# folder or something under it. You can do that. That's not a problem. But the other thing too is, if you do it on your desktop, you can take these folders and just copy them right to your flash drive.
Yeah, I was thinking like just the hard drive on it.
Yeah, you can do it, if you want to do it on your C drive, you can do it anywhere you want. But what I'm going to require is when you turn in actual work, and I'm talking your programs, then I'm going to need your whole folder. All right? And I'm not going to be all that forgiving if you give me your folder and I open it up and there's nothing there because it's saved it someplace else. All right? So this right here up above it, it's going to create a folder under this folder with whatever name you give it. Does that make sense? Now this first project that we're going to do is going to be the red, white, and blue, and I just called mine All-American. All-American. I'm going to recommend, when you give these names, don't put blank spaces in there. Can you? Yes. Should you? No. The other thing too is, don't put special characters in there. Don't even put a hyphen in. Especially though, I've seen people do this before, where I used to give a project from a book I used when I was at the other school. It was called Joe's Automotive. And we built this thing. It was, basically a bill for an auto shop. And I forgot to tell people one year, when you call it Joe's, don't call it Joe''S, and half the class did that. And it might work fine forever, but all of a sudden one day it doesn't understand that character, and it happened to one person. This guy's raising his hand, he's going nuts. He's like, my program was fine, it's just about done, but now it doesn't work. I said, did you save it with an apostrophe? Yes. Guess what? You're going to get to basically create it all over again. Because there are internal files that get created when you do this stuff. If those get corrupted in any way, you can't change those. I've seen people do that. Well, I can bring up these internal files, and I'm just going to manually change them. Yeah, but there's a syncing that goes on in the software that when you change stuff manually, does not happen. All right. So I called mine All-American. Notice I used Pascal casing, not camel casing. I made sure it was in my C# folder, and I'm going to click OK. Now, the other thing too is when you look right here, it says create directory. That should be checked by default. Don't uncheck that. Add to source control. We're not working on projects with multiple people, so you can leave that unchecked. Okay? Now, I'm going to click OK now, and you're going to notice my screen's going to change, and a bunch of stuff that's over here, as you didn't see it, that's what all got built for me now. And I want to show you one last thing before we go on, just so you see this. Don't worry about doing it. You don't have to. If when I did this file, new, if instead of saying project, I'd have said website, that's going to be the major change for the ASP.NET class in fall. We're going to choose website because we're actually going to be creating web projects. All right? Okay. So what you see on your screen right now is a bunch of stuff. Just to show you this is all explained in the book, and I'm actually going through a lot of stuff in Chapter 2 right now with you. This is called your toolbox. So let's say that Amin looks at it and he goes, I don't have that. Did I do something wrong? No. If you don't want it there anymore, you can click the X up here, and it goes away. All right? And it brings up another one that's there, and I click that again. See how it's gone? If I want to bring it back, it's View, and then I just choose Toolbox, and it's back. It also has a thing called the pin in it. Notice that when I click this, it looks like a little stick pin. If I click here, it's there, but it only comes around when I need it. I like to pin it, so I click the pin, and once I click the pin, I don't know why it didn't pop back up, but Toolbox, there we go. And now when I pin it, see what happens? Okay? I suggest you leave it pinned all the time. If you don't want to, you don't have to. Now, one thing that really is a pain in the butt about this, probably your output window doesn't look like mine. You see can you see what's on the screen right now? You can do what's called dock these things, so you can move it around. So if I wanted to, I could take this and move it on this side and this on this side. You can do that, but the stuff never lines up right. So eventually, and I don't remember, I think it's under Tools, Options, there's like a reset in here someplace. So if you really screw up the way your screen looks, you can reset it. All right? I'm not going to worry about that right now. So this is our toolbox. This is called the output window. That's where the errors are going to show, is in here. All right, down here. This is my form. This is the area where I draw. So if I'm creating a GUI, I create the GUI right here. This is called the Solution Explorer. It's kind of like a file explorer. It shows me all the different files in the project. And down at the bottom here, this is called the Properties window. And I can make any one of these bigger or smaller as I see fit. See that? But again, you can remove these, So if I remove the properties windows, oh my God, I want that back. It's just view, and find where it says, in here someplace, it'll say properties window. All right? I don't know where it is, and now I can't find it, probably removed the wrong one, but there is a way to get it back. I'm not worried about it. All right? Okay. So the first thing that we want to do right here, if you remember the way that that looked, this was purple in the back, right? You can make it any color you want, but I don't want, we could even leave it gray, that would work okay. But on here, I don't want this to be, I want it to be, let's just say I want it to be purple for whatever reason, okay? Now, project, view, I always thought it said properties window in here, so I definitely removed the wrong one. Okay, thank you.
Property manager, is that what
View, where? Other windows.
it is?
Right there,
Above
right there.
toolbars.
Above what? Toolbars?
Yeah.
Keep going down. Under find results.
There we go, other windows, thank you. That's, I don't think that's it, though. That's a property manager. That's not the property window. But if that happens, I can always do this. Worst case, I'm gonna exit, and I'm gonna start the whole thing up again. There is a way to bring it back. I just don't wanna look for it right now. I want us to write a project today. All right? Hopefully it'll be back when we come in here now. So, File, New, Project, and notice how it's now got the right location? All right, so I'm just gonna call this one AA2 for All American 2. All right, okay. Of course, now it's got that property manager open. All right. I'll tell you what, I'm gonna show you, you'll be able to do this. I might still have some problems with what I've got here. What I'm showing you will work fine for you, okay? Now, if you look up on the screen, there's really two or three things I can do. First of all, I can double click on where it says button 4 times. Watch what happens when I do this. Double click, double click, double click, double click. See that? It made 4 buttons. So I can take them and then manually space them out. I can make this form here, I can make it wider. So I can do this, and I can bring this one down, then I can bring this one down, etc. Does that make sense to everyone? I can do it that way. Or, if I don't want to do it like that, okay, come on, delete. All right, or I can come in here and I can say, okay, where's my button? It's up here. I can take it and drag it and drop it, do another one and drag it and drop it, do another one and drag it and drop it. Then I've got some control over where they're going to be positioned. So I can do that. Or if I don't want to do it one of those ways, I can make a first one. I can do a Control C for copy and a Control V for paste. So whatever way you want to do this, put 4 buttons on your screen, please. All right. Was everybody able to put the 4 buttons on? Yes? Again, I don't care how you do it. It really and truly does not matter. There is no difference. You'll see that you get these little guides here to try to help you have stuff lined up. Notice that if you look up on the screen, you see how that blue thing lines up there? All right. So that's not great, but that's fine. And notice what came back somehow is my properties window. Okay, so mine's back.
You hit F4, it should pop up.
Okay. So, everybody has this, correct? Now, I want to teach you a couple key things. And I really probably should have had you do this even before you put the buttons on, although it's totally fine. Single click, don't double click, single click someplace in a blank spot on the form. Single click. All right? And you'll notice, please look up on the screen here, if I click a button, I don't want you to do this, but if I click a button, see how it says button 1 there? And if I click on the form, it says form 1. In your properties window, it always shows you what control is active. These are all controls. We now have 4 button controls and we have a form control. And even more than that, we have 4 button objects and 1 form object. That's what we have. All right? But the first thing I want to do is I want to click on the form, and the first thing you should always do is give stuff good names. So I'm clicking on there, and right up near the top, it should say name, and mine says form 1. Well, that's a crummy name. Now, it used to be that Microsoft used to recommend that, for example, you always had a 3-letter identifier at the beginning. So what you said for form was FRM followed by a name. Now, they just suggest that you say form followed by the name. So this is my All-American form, so I'm going to call this form All-American. See what I did? This does not make your program run any better. But what we're doing is rather than having 5 controls on our form that are called Form 1, Button 2, Button 3, and Button 4, we're going to have viable names that will help once we put code or associate code with those names. All right, so as soon as I hit, notice it still says Form 1, but when I hit Enter, it changes to Form All-American. Make sense? All right, the next thing I'm going to do is, because my form is still active right here, it's still my active control, I'm going to arrow down, and I'm going to find something that says back color. And right now it's got gray and it says control. I'm going to click that box right there, and then I'm going to click this down arrow. And if this doesn't come up, let me know. But I want to choose what's custom because now I can choose any color I want. We don't want red, we don't want white, we don't want blue. So I just chose purple. Pretty obvious what just happened? And if I did that too fast, let me undo it and do it again. So I'm clicking on a blank spot in the form. I'm going and arrowing down. I was at name. I'm going to arrow down here, or use my scroll down, I should say, and find where it says back color. Other than the name at the top, everything else in here is in alphabetic order. All right? But not the name. They put the name at the top on purpose. So I'm going down to back color. I'm clicking the box there. That brings up this down arrow. I'm clicking the down arrow, and I'm choosing custom. Okay? And I just chose purple. You can choose any color you want, but that's the one I chose. So we've done a few things here. We created a form. We changed the name of the form. We changed one of the properties of the form, that being the back color. All right? And we added 4 buttons. Okay? Now I'm going to come in, and I'm going to do 2 things with each button. Now let me show you, and then I'm going to stop talking so you can do it for all 4. So I'm going to first click on button 1, single click, and I'm going to go to the name, and I don't want to call it button 1. I'm going to call this first one button red with a capital R. So I'm using camel casing. So that's going to say button red. That's the name. Then I'm going to arrow down, and I'm going to find the property that says text. And that says button 1 also. And I want to change that to red. Please look up on the screen. Would you agree that says button 1? Now notice when I type in red and I hit enter, the text is what controls what something looks like on the screen, the interface. So I want to change, I want this one to be button red with red on its face, button blue with blue on its face, button I'm sorry, button white with white on its face and button blue. So I want you to change those 3 buttons. Does that make sense? All right, so I just did the first one with you. I'm going to do the second one. If you're confused, just watch what I'm doing. And I'm going to change the name of the second one to button white. And I'm going to change the text property to white. And I'm going to do the third one. I'm going to change the name of it to button blue. And I'm going to change the text property to blue, not blee. And the last button, I'm going to call that one exit. So I'm going to make the name of it button exit. All right. And I'm going to make the text for it the word exit. Is there anything I've done that doesn't make sense? And again, you're going fast, Jeff. Maybe a little bit. We've got a half an hour left in class today. And everybody's is going to work by the end of the class period. Have I done anything that doesn't make sense to people? So I'm asking you this, okay? When I change this to button red, what is the name of that property? Not text. What is the name of that property? It's right at the top here. The name of the property is name. We changed the name property. The word red on here, what property is that? Text. So you've learned 2 properties already. All right? Would you agree? Look up on the screen here, please. If I go back and click on the form again, right now it says Form 1 here, right? Even though we changed the name to All American. So that is the form's text. So I can come down here and here I can put in blank spaces. This is my All-American, let me make that a capital. This is my All-American form. You see how that changed? All right. Always change, please listen to this, always change the name of your controls before you put any code there. Because otherwise what happens is the system is going to create code windows for you. You'll see those in a minute, but it'll create them under the wrong name. Then you have to manually go in. It's not just removing them. It's a big pain in the butt. So always, always name your controls before you add any code to them. All right? Now, you don't have to do this, but I can run this program now. And it is functional, even though you know it's not. Yes, it is. When you click the button, it looks pushed in. It doesn't do anything. Why doesn't it do anything? We haven't made it do anything. Yeah, there's no code there. That's where those 4 lines go in. All right? Now, had we gone in and just put in the buttons and then double clicked, which is what we're going to do right now, this, instead of saying button red, would say button 1. That's not what you want. So that's why I'm saying rename your control, then double click it to add the code. All right? This is very simple. So the line that we want to add here, I'm not going to go through it, but we will, but just not right now. This dot, notice that when I type in the word this, see how it gets blue? It's a key word. Now I'm putting a dot in there. Now that's IntelliSense. I'm going to put in a B for back color. Now it's got to be just my B stuff in there. All right? But I want to say this dot back color equals. So this is saying when I click this button, I want to change the background color for the form. That's what we're saying. And the way that we do this is we say system dot drawing dot color dot, notice when I type in an R, what comes up right away? Red in the IntelliSense. All right? ED. Okay, so that, would you agree that's all we put in, right? Now I'm going to save this. I'm going to recommend, please look up on the screen, this is important. Okay? 2 things. First of all, whenever you save, do either a file, save all, or click that double disk icon. Okay? If you're ever asked, You might say, well, geez, I ran my program 50 times, I never got asked this before. You might get asked, do you want to save the solution file? If you get asked that, say no. Because by default, it's going to save it. Remember where I showed you where under Documents, Projects? So it'll save that solution file in the wrong place. If you say no, it'll save it for you, but it'll save it in the right place. All right? So I'm going to come in and I'm going to run this again. Now, would you all agree that this should work? When I click red, none of the other things should do anything. So it's red, and it doesn't do anything. All right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in, and next I'm going to double click on the white. Now I could type it in again, or I could just copy all that to the clipboard and change it from red to white. And then I can do it again, and I can say blue. So now the only thing that doesn't work is the exit button, because we didn't put any code in for that yet. All right? So I'm going to come back to that, and it's real simple to exit a program, application.exit, like that. That's the 4 lines of code. So I'm going to save this by clicking the double disk icon to save all. I'm going to run it, and notice now I go to red, to white, to blue, and I can exit. Now you can say, well, what if I want, yeah, there's more things we could add to this. But I wanted to show you a very, very simplistic program. If you have not yet put in this code, I'd like you to try to do that before the period ends. So I'm going to put all of it up here. So literally all the code that you have to put in, there's the red button, the blue button, the white button, the blue button, and I guess I can't, well, maybe let me if I remove some blank lines here. There's everything. All right, so I'd like you to try that. You don't have to turn it in, and if you run into any kind of problems, please raise your hand. The biggest thing with this is, by and large, people make this much harder than it has to be.
So it's better off going to each part of the actual design and double clicking it to have it pull up the.
The question was, is it better off to just go back here into what's called design mode and double click? There's other ways that you can do it as well. Just so you know, again, we'll go into this in a later chapter, but you see these things up here? Right now you've got the A to Z. If you go to the one that looks like a lightning bolt, you can go there, and now if I click here, I can find that there'll be a click method here. So I can do that, and then I can double click on it there, and it brings up the same thing. So there's multiple ways of bringing it up. I'm just showing you what I consider to be the most straightforward way of doing it. Is there anything that's, I'm asking you this, is there anything that's in here that we just went over in these lines of code that doesn't make sense to anyone? This is your chance to ask.
Mine's broke.
Yours broke?
No, it's not broken. It doesn't work.
Okay, then I'll take a look at it. Now, here's your first news flash of the day. It'll get harder than this. All right? So please don't think, oh, wow, this isn't bad. You know, like, geez, 16 weeks of this. No, it'll get much harder. All right? But it's important that we have a foundation that we can start from. Well, go ahead and double click your
Well, it just works.
just work.
That's not right.
Yep.
It works, but then it says it's button, and it's button blue. But I don't know. Change the name
Oh,
and all that.
well, then you must not have changed that one.
I did, and then I changed it in here and it said.
I know, it doesn't like it when you do that. Okay, this is what I recommend you do, okay? Is, see, what's happened is, there is an internal file, it's a naming file, and it's .designer.cs. It already is associated with the name button data. So you might be better off literally just removing that button, and then creating another button, renaming it, and then putting it back in. That should fix it. No, I'm talking about, I would just leave this stuff in code there. It's not gonna hurt anything. It's a little low, because you guess is, and if you disagree with me, okay, but my guess is what you probably did. I would just say, just go back to toolbox. But my guess is that you changed the name of 3 of them, but you didn't change the name of the other. Again, if you say you did, I believe you, but that's the only thing that makes sense.
So, I have one question to that, so, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Mine got like major.
Oh, I just had a question, so, I just tried to explain something, so, I tried double clicking on the form, just to show like,
Yes,
what it would do.
when you
So-
double click on the form, it's gonna bring up the form's logo.
And so what it did was it pulled it up here underneath all of this?
Yes.
Which is what it should do?
Because it does it in order, it does it in the order in which you put
Right.
them in. Brady just brought up a good point, just, I want everybody to hear this, so you can keep working, but please listen to this. So you saw what the interface looked like, right? Everybody saw it. I'm gonna draw it over here, a mini interface, right there. So you had 4 buttons. You had red, you had white, you had blue, and you had exit. So that's your interface. When you double click those buttons, it doesn't matter the order in which you click them, but whatever order you click them in, that's the order that it's gonna be put in your code window. You see what I'm saying? And if you're anal, you wanna probably click them in the order in which you want them. Because you go, well, I'll just move them. The system doesn't like it when you do that. All right? So if you click the exit one first, that's gonna be at the top of your code window. And then the other ones will be underneath it. That's just the way that it works. Plus, if you bring up any control, so let's say I did this.
Yeah, I just brought
Yeah,
up the.
can everybody look up here just for a second, please? So let's say that I'll just bring up another button, all right? I don't have to do that, but I'll just bring up another button, okay? So I'm gonna put another button here. Okay, so there's button 1. And yeah, I wanna add another button. I want a clear button or something like that that makes it white again. But I forget to change the name. So I double click on it. And it's, oh hell, it's button 1 click. I don't want that. All right, I don't even want it. So what's the best thing to do? Well, one thing that you can do, and I probably should have shown you this because I think this will work. So I really wanted this to be called button clear. All right, so I go over, right now this is what you see. You've got everything in order, alphabetic order right there. But if I click this little lightning bolt that's right here, now it's going to say, oh, I've already got something in the click event for that button. See that? So I'm going to remove this. I'm literally going to remove it. Okay, now watch what happens when I did that. I don't want to double click it again, but if I view my code, now that's gone. See that? That button 1 is gone. If it does show there, then you can manually remove it. But you have to remove it from your properties window first. You can't just highlight it and then just hit.
It's like creating your browser.
Well, and the reason for that is, just so you know, because my system is screwed up here too with all, I don't know what half this stuff on here is. All right? But what happens is, and it'll all get fixed. I'm not worried about it. But what happens is there are a bunch of internal files in here. There is a file that's got, right now mine is called AA2. There should be a file in here that I believe is called like AA2.designer.cs. That's all the code that Visual Studio writes when I'm setting all this stuff up. All right? And you don't want to monkey with that file because those are system files. But the reason I'm telling you to click this Save All is that saves every file, yours and the system files. If you just do a file save, you know, just to save like that, it only saves that file. But if there's any internal files, it doesn't automatically save those. All right? The other thing too, and this isn't what Brady had said, but this is going to happen to everybody. You got a brand new form up there. Just pretend I didn't even have these buttons. And you just double click it. It brings up the load event for the form. And that says, what do you want to do when the form is loaded into memory? I can leave that there. It's not hurting anything, but don't just highlight it and hit delete. No, don't do that because it screws up those internal files. If you do that, what you want to do is you want to go back into the designer with the form highlighted. You want to click again on the lightning bolt and find the load event and then remove this. And you'll notice now when I go back and I look at my code, it's gone. You let the system remove things for you. You don't do it. And you know what's bad about that? Is there'll be at least one of you in here that'll still do it wrong anyway. And I still occasionally do it wrong anyway. I mean, that's how you learn, right? It's not that big a thing. Now, I'm gonna go over and help Drew. Is there anyone else, though, that doesn't understand what we've just done? It was very simple, and the last thing I want to show you, if you look on the screen quick, is this is referred to as being design mode. See that? That's what we're in. This is code mode. You're writing code, all right? And when you're in design mode right here, let's say I wanted to get the code mode real fast, but I didn't want to double click anything. You can either right mouse click and choose view code, or to go back and forth, you can hit your F7 key, and that'll put you into code mode. See what I'm saying? Usually you're gonna have both of these open, so you can bop back and forth between those. All right? All right. Yeah, like I said, I don't know what's being going on. I don't know if this helped or hurt, but let's try this. Let's, just close the entire page. Just start a visual studio. Just do a file. Okay, you can use it. Either way. All right, now, I'm gonna search you, I think there's, okay. They can have two, so you just take the last one. Oh, okay, that's fine, then just click OK. I have never seen that happen before.
I think it's.
Oh, okay, okay, yeah, you should even have this stuff out there.
Yeah, I don't know.
Single click on just Visual C Sharp, just on. And try Windows. Double click on that. Okay, so what you have is double click on the that have choose classic desktop. There, that's what you want. Now, you want Windows Form application, but you want to give it a different name. There, so you call it whatever you want, American, whatever, it doesn't matter. Now when you click OK, it should come up and look just the same way everyone else is doing. There you go.
Okay, that's where it was.
That's what it was. I had not seen that. That's something fairly new because that we didn't have that in older version.
I actually, first thing that popped up from mine.
I think I got it, I wasn't able to do it. She's having, I don't get what's going on.
Okay.
I like, you told me to redo it, and I did it, it still doesn't do it. And then I have some void thing, and you can make it download.
What were you, all right, so you got.
Okay, so somehow you double clicked on the form. You had to because that's how you get the forms loaded up. That's okay. We'll go back into your design mode. All right, so just single click on the form. Click over on where it's got the lightning bolt there, and if you scroll up and down, someplace there's going to be something in black there. Highlight all that. and just hit Now, if you right mouse click on here and choose view code, that should be open. Okay, that's, again, that's how you remove it and put it in there instead. All right, now, is there something else that's not
So
working?
this
you said?
was the blue thing that we.
Okay, the one you added,
Yeah, I
so your
added
red
the
one
blue
looks right, your white one looks right. So go back to your design mode and just single click on where it's got blue. It says button blue, okay, so double click on it. It doesn't bring it up for some reason, so right mouse, just right mouse click and choose, or hit F7, recall is fine. I'm wondering if somehow we didn't screw it up because of this, because we did remove that. And the designer might have screwed things up. I'll tell you what, I don't know if this will work or not. Let's manually go in, change the name of that from what we put in button blue, put in, capital B, and we save the program and try to work it. See, and my guess is that's okay, just say no. My guess is the error you're gonna get already exists, so there already is one, even though it didn't show it. That's okay. Go ahead and don't even worry about those. Just leave it right there. Double click on your blue bar again. we just put in, you can copy that line, the line that sets it if you want. And in fact, just to make sure we don't have any, well, okay, that's fine. Yeah, save it, and try to run it. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, it's still not quick enough. It was when we did all the renaming and stuff, the system itself is literally confused. Okay, now, let's see if we can come up with a real easy fix. It'll look a little funky for now. Let's take the button, let's see, just hit. Add a new button. Okay, move that button over. First thing is, let's give it a name. So call it button, just call it button. Okay? No, just, you say, look, looking on it, you right, scroll up to the top here where you'll be by your name. You want the one actually. Okay. It's one of those, so just call it button. That's fine. All right, and there, now double click on that. All right, now, copy this line in. Which you have. All right, save.
No, I actually.
It may still be there, I don't know. And like I said,
Don't
but
you
it's
just know?
but it's nothing, it's nothing. It's because when we did all
I
that
think
stuff,
there is, 'cause he has.
some, I think,
There.
at first I told you, look at that one button, it still is in that, it still is in that internal file. I would, you know, I would just start a project. I mean, you know what you have, you know.
Yes.
And you probably won't do that again. I'm serious, that's a good, if you're gonna screw something up, isn't the first day a good day to screw it up? I would think it is at least.
Definitely working on watching years too.
Yeah. And I'm sure you're picking up a lot just watching. You can do it, yeah. Yeah, if you had any kind of problem, that's a good, kind of good litmus test for you. Start with start brand new, and see if you can write the program yourself. See what I'm saying? Call it All-American 2, call it Red, White, and Blue, whatever, and just rewrite the program. Means you get it to work?
It's, our computer's trying to restore it now.
Oh, okay. Ivy, did you get it to work?
Yeah.
Evan, work? Okay. Dominic, did you get it to work? Drew at least knows now that it wasn't his problem, so hopefully he'll get his to work, and I was gonna ask Ethan too, so. So we'll do this, I guarantee you, no matter what, I promise, I won't talk any more than 2 hours. You'll have at least 2 hours of lab tomorrow, at least. But what we'll do tomorrow is we'll start from the beginning, and I want us to write, hopefully we'll have time to write two versions of that calculator program. That's the first thing we'll do, and we'll do the test review for the written test on Wednesday for Chapter 1. All right, if we can get all that done by 10, then you'll have the rest of the period to work on this stuff. This thing, I'm just gonna, if everybody's here and everybody is working, you don't even have to turn in that review stuff. That's what's due tomorrow. I'm just gonna give everybody 10 points. Especially those of you who had problems turning in homework, that'll make sure that for each chapter, you'll have a 10 for that.
So we just have to have the, just take down the review questions that we have.
Yeah, but I still have created the test review page for you like we did last semester. I sent you the first, it's either the first 2 or the first 4 chapters already. And that was emailed to you at the end of last week. So you've got that. In fact, I'll show you, They look like this. So this is what we'll go over tomorrow.
Okay, so that's the third. Okay.
Yeah, that's the review. Again, they're a little longer than they were last time because there's a few more questions on there. But if, literally, I'm giving you the test. So, like you've seen this before, we'll go over, yeah, you should have all of them.
So this is what we have to have done.
I can send them again, that's fine.
If you don't mind sending me.
No, I'll send them again to everybody.
So is this what we have to have done tomorrow?
What's that?
Do we have to have this done tomorrow, or is this something you're giving us?
No, this is something I'm giving you tomorrow. You don't have to do anything for tomorrow.
Okay.
Valerie says, no, that's not true. I've got to get this damn program to work by tomorrow.
I think I did the same thing, and now I'm just like losing my mind. Because I was just like on a roll, and I clicked it, and I was like, no, no, no.
Well,
I need to click it. But I
I,
clicked it out.
sometimes what I tell people is, it comes to everybody. But if you're having problems, then do it like this. Pretend there's only a red button in the program. So put a single button out there, change the name, double click on it, put the code in, run the program, make sure it goes red. Then stop the program run, put a blue button in, and do the same thing. If that's easier for you as you're starting, then that's what you should do. See, I've already gotten an email from Shannon. As we are having a chilly start to the semester, I wanted to remind everyone to let their students know that only outer garments with a Rankin logo are allowed in the classroom. Please be patient with new students. Yeah, well, whatever. We're waiting on orders for the blue Rankin shop jackets. To my knowledge, yeah. Okay. So tomorrow, if I see you in there and you've got that jacket on, you know, I can say you can have it on when you walk into the room, but once class starts, you're supposed to have it off.
There you go.
Right?
Codes? Yeah, codes.
Yeah.
Go.
And did you get yours to work, Ethan? Ethan?
I was looking at the last
Did yours work? No, it didn't?
Unfortunately.
All right, then let's take a look at what does it do.
I'm gonna tool this.
Maybe because I renamed it during.
That sounds familiar.
Mine works,
What
guys,
happened?
it's fine.
Everybody.
You know what we're gonna do tomorrow morning? The first thing, we're gonna do about 15 minutes to this, 15. We're starting right at 8.
That's fine.
So as soon as you get in, start up Visual Studio, start up a new project. And just call it hello. That's it. Just call it hello. We're gonna rebuild this thing, and we're gonna do it button, change the name, put the code in. A button, change the name, put the code in. We're gonna do that 4 times, in 15 minutes. If you go minority work, then you don't have to do it, but you can at least watch.
Mine doesn't work. The name is goodbye.
There you go.
Goodbye. Yep.